save it out of PowerPoint?
Yeah, and that's how I did some of my presentations in my undergrad. Like, I would make some slides and
Oh,
then we
okay.
put them all together. But this is Unit 3 discussion group, and we're going to talk about the Habermas.
Bill, did you see
Guest
I
appearance.
got it.
an AC duct?
Yeah. That's what I was asking. I can't, yeah.
Oh my god.
No,
I would have gone a
didn't I
week
just
without
ask? I
an
just
AC
asked.
adapter.
No, I just asked who I was gonna, I thought the person had left.
Oh
So,
no.
okay,
No.
alright.
Oh my god.
But I just asked them who left their adapter.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't wanna leave it in there for someone else
Thank you.
to take it.
So I think one of the themes that we are going to carry across in our presentation next week is that of control in the classroom. And yeah, who wants to start on that? Because I don't. So I don't want to just repeat what we said in class, but I mean, I think something that interests me is the fact that, you know, the whole positive expectations thing, and that the reason that teachers feel they need to control their students is because they don't think their students are capable of controlling themselves. And I think that's something that needs to change in some of the urban schools. And I think this article, you know, tries to offer some solutions to that.
Oh yeah, I didn't stay too long.
We said in class, one of the action words, having the students engage, not just like drilling them like, okay, do this, and they're sort of like robots, just not thinking. They're sort of just like going through the day like zombies, and they're not really learning anything because the teacher doesn't think they're capable of doing that on their own.
Okay. Of course, I'm in agreement with all that. My whole concern, as you know, was the stereotypic description, characteristics of urban kids, describing simply their nature.
Yeah, like the parents of
Some of the interesting points, materialistic, dependent, and that word is very strong because what you have in teaching and learning is a relationship where the teacher has all the knowledge, and there is direction, there's lecturing, there's direction, and there's expectation of this pedagogy of poverty and the bullets that are mentioned.
Well, and then one of the bullets I thought was interesting was that it says that it sort of suggests that teachers are more like security guards or police. That it says certain school duties are essentially police or monitoring activities that would be better performed by hired guards. So it's like instead of teaching and doing their teaching job, they're sort of acting like babysitters or monitors for the day, almost because they don't think the students, like I said, are capable. And yeah, a lot of the things that I would like, parents who are perceived as poorly educated or otherwise inadequate. I mean, a chance to have things explained to them, like what? Like really? Like I just feel like it gives urban parents such little credit. Like, oh, you are just below all of this. Let me explain this to you. And it doesn't at all take into consideration any of the cultural things we've been talking. It doesn't build on the culture of the students. It's sort of just like, almost like the whole assimilation thing. It's like, okay, parents, we can't value anything that you have to bring to the table.
Right.
It's like, let me show you what we're supposed to be doing here.
And how I'm going to make your child successful.
Yeah. And you're not going to have anything to do with it.
That's like one of the top 5, you know, for the influences on student learning.
Yeah, I think you'd be interested in.
Is what?
Parent support and their
Parent
interaction,
support, yes.
you know, their connection with the school and, you know.
Yeah, the top 5, it was classroom management was number 1. Number 2 was metacognitive processes.
I don't remember all of them, but
the parent
the
support
parent
was in the
one,
top 5.
yeah, top 5.
And I think teacher and student interactions was also the top 5.
Right.
So, you know, like the controlling part of it, it's like it doesn't really work that way because it's like if you're controlling everything, you're not letting.
There's no
it's,
interaction.
Yes,
it's
more
one-sided.
teacher intends their student.
Can we really and center on this word dependent? For example, some of my former experience in this type of schooling is that you're bringing and buying pencils and paper every day. You're not buying it every day, but you have enough stock where the kids, there is a totally dependent relationship that develops, and really you're helping to promote the codependency, because you began to automatically supply your children with pencils, with paper every day, and they're not giving any incentive at all, Jamie, to provide for those things. But let me tell you what you do notice: that every entertainment item that they enjoy, it's in the backpack.
Yeah.
The cell phone is there, the game set is there. When I was subbing as years ago for a middle school, when the Pokemon,
Oh my gosh!
Pokemon,
Yeah,
I've
we
never
had.
had any of those
What?
stuff.
Okay, so in middle school, I had my own little book. It was stolen. Someone stole it from me, and I knew who it was. But he said if I told on him, he would tell the whole class that I was on my period. And that was in fifth grade. I remember I said I know you took. And he's like, well, if you tell anyone, I'm gonna tell the whole class that you have your period. And I never got my awesome. They were like, it was red and Pikachu on the front, and it had plastic, and all the cards were organized. It was just so sad.
Okay, and
Sorry, I digressed.
the point I'm making is they made sure they had all their Pokemon
Oh yeah.
cards. They were neatly displayed in binders.
Yep.
So these kids had access to money and resources.
Yeah.
And I
Those were
was
cheap. Especially if you wanted to
stupidly,
get all of them.
I can accept it today, I was stupidly buying their classroom materials.
Because you didn't think that they were.
It's the pedagogy of poverty. You buy into the codependency.
Exactly. Ooh, write that down.
There you go.
Codependency.
You buy into the codependency. I'm so glad this word is in here, because I experienced it personally. You buy into codependency with these kids.
Yeah, and that's sort of oh my gosh, what's the word? Enabling.
Enabling
Yeah.
is the word. You enable some of their characteristics when it's something
So it's like you're almost contributing to
you're
this.
contributing
this culture.
to this culture. One interesting thing I wanted to, as we go from these characteristics, this statement that's made about the solution, which is the next paragraph.
Which
Anyone
section
who
is that?
would-
I'm on the pad.
Yeah, the nature of urban children and youth. That's the
We are?
title of this where the characteristics are giving a cruel, lacking in compassion, uneasy with intimacy. That's a good one too. I'm gonna get on that in a moment. It is they share relationships, but not academic, social relationships. In many of these urban classrooms, they could talk about many social issues, sports, entertainment, music. They could share that in your classroom, and that's what most of their conversation is about
Well, it's
when
like
you're
this,
trying to talk about fractions.
the whole section is like everything in italics. It talks about when students are involved in the issues, when students are involved in planning what they will do, when students are involved in providing ideals such as fairness, equity, and justice. When students are actively involved. So like sorry, I feel like a child. It's when they have say, and I think that goes back to what our presentation is going to be about. Like, you can't completely hand over the reins, like, but that's the whole key to motivation. We talk about our motivation class is choice. Is that when students have a choice or have a say, they're automatically motivated because they're invested in the subject matter.
I like what Dr. P said about every teacher, every instructor must have decide where they're going to be.
Be on the scale.
On the scale.
And that's
That-
why I
that was
think we
interesting.
should make we should have some visual aid when we do
You're talking about the continuum, like where?
Where? How
Well, yeah,
much
you can
freedom?
consider as a continuum because there's one side, and you don't want to be on either one side because
Yeah.
I think the far, let's say like we'll call it the far right, is when you're like completely in control. You don't want that because for all the reasons are in this article, and then you don't want to be on the far left because when they did that presentation, we kept thinking like. We should really review the video, I guess,
We
because I
do,
don't
yeah.
entirely remember everything. But I remember being very passionate about it and saying, I mean, you're just letting them kind of like do whatever they want, and to what extent you kind of have to rein them in. So I think,
Yeah, we really need to get
that's why I think we
into
should kind of like show
the
like,
proper balance
yeah.
of freedom, if I can use that term, in the classroom. But I found something very interesting. I just want to get both of your reflection on it. In the second paragraph, anyone who proposed specific forms of teaching as alternative to pedagogy of poverty must recognize that Gatto's description of his students is only the starting point. Watch this. These are the attributes that have been enhanced and elicited by an authoritative pedagogy and do not represent students' true and ultimate nature. I certainly agree with that, but watch this. Young people can become more and different, but they must be taught how. Now watch this. This means to me that two conditions must pertain before there can be a serious alternative to the pedagogy of poverty. The whole school faculty and school community, not the individual teacher, must be the unit of change. Watch this. And there must be patience and persistence of application. Since students can and be expected to resist changes to a system they can predict and know how to control. The change, even that we're making in California standards, going from the idea of California state standards to now Common Core standards.
Well, I also think that this can be applied to just behavior, not even academics. Like when they've had a certain experience throughout school in terms of, and we actually did an exercise. So gosh, pretty intense in our motivation class. Each of us would go outside for about a minute, and then we would come into the class, and we were supposed to like just be going nuts, like talking, walking around, throwing paper, so that we would feel what it's like to walk into a classroom where the kids just won't. They've been taught a certain way for years that they not to respond to teachers, and we were talking about how that's not going to change in a day. The students are used to this, so like you have to take it one step at a time. Like reach out to a couple students a day, and eventually they start. You can't just give up, even though they've been taught a certain way for so long. They've learned how to manipulate the system, and then teachers are just like, well, forget this. I mean, I can't deal with this. These unruly children. And I think that's
so
it.
the point, and your point is well taken, and you're giving some direction of how it can be done. But certainly, this is interesting to note that this pedagogy of poverty has been so entrenched in their dependent minds that they're going to be very persistent to the change of freedom given to them. That's incredible. I think that you talk about the problem that's involved here: authoritative classroom, kids not being engaged in their own learning. But then on the other hand, they're going to resist the change.
Exactly. They're so comfortable with this
Yeah.
authoritative classroom that when they're given choices and they're given the reins a little bit, it's like, oh my gosh, what the hell are we supposed to do?
Don't you think they got dependent on me bringing pencils and paper
Yeah.
and knowing it would be
And you
there?
finally decide,
Oh,
okay,
I'm
this is
just-
ridiculous. They can get
Yeah.
it. And they're like, oh my gosh, you guys have pencils and paper for us.
I have to bring and these kids live at the 99-cent store in their neighborhood. I mean, they get the stink bombs from there. Don't laugh. They do. The stink bomb that will go off in your classroom and spoil your whole lesson for that day. These kids, when they were into the yo-yos,
I had one.
sure, it goes in cycles.
Exactly, and
Whatever, is a little social craze.
well, it's like, how do you ease them into? I mean, because you have to be the unit of change, but it's not going to happen overnight.
It's not. Well, this is very enlightening that you have this pedagogy of poverty that has been inbred in instructors and teachers and administrators for years. This is what defined the adequate and competent teacher. Sure, you walked in, the classroom was quiet, kids were doing their homework, they were on task with the lesson, they were reading their math book or music composition, and the principal walked in, there were student work on the board, it was nice and quiet, the principal walks out and hey, A+ teacher.
Yeah.
And now, you're changing the whole idea of instruction and classroom management in your classroom, and certainly the kids themselves are going to have to get the desire for change here. I think that's.
That's when I sort
think
of like feel
incredible.
positive about this program. It's like, hopefully, we're like, feeding out teachers that sort of understand like the changes, and that's not going to happen overnight. It's just a gradual, like, I don't know. Just trying to be an optimist.
Remember how Dr. Weiner kind of talked about like how his first year he came into Jordan, it was like chaos, and then it took him like.
Well, yeah, that's
a
what he
year or
said.
so.
Sometimes he says if you want to quit, like depending, like if you're at a high school, don't quit in your first 4 years. Like okay, maybe when you get to 5, you still can't handle it, then maybe. But every year you get a new group of people, and you're sort of working with them, and each year you sort of like groom them to behave in a certain way. You teach them what you're teaching them, and it's sort of like it's slow but gradually sort of.
There was that one quote that he said where you cannot expect the student to do something when you haven't
I
taught
taught them
them.
how to do it.
And this article is, I see the reality here. Statements like having learned to navigate the urban schools based on the pedagogy of poverty, students will not readily abandon all their know-how to take on willy-nilly new and uncertain systems that they may not be able to control.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Even though they weren't, it wasn't productive and they weren't engaged, it's still what they're comfortable with, and they know how to navigate through it. And then suddenly things change, and they're given more power, and they're like, "Woo!
Wow!
What do I do?"
And most of these students don't know what to do. They don't know they have ability. Yeah.
And it all comes back to and persistence, and everything is connected.
And what about the parents? I mean, think about it. Well, my son says you're allowing him to teach the class. Why aren't you doing your job,
Oh yeah.
Bailey?
Well, that's why we're gonna in just a moment. I haven't actually. I kind of have an idea for what we could do for our PowerPoint to make it short, simple, concise. I don't know if you guys want to start that yet. It's about 8. Okay, my watch and my iPad don't quite agree on this.
Okay.
My watch says it's 8:25. My iPad says it's 8:27. So I don't know if you want to stop this and move on to the presentation, or you want to do that.
Great.
We don't need to record our presentation preparation, so. So my idea was sort of that we each do a part, like if we do our presentation.